Hi, I'm James Woolcott from pixelrefresh.com. I am at ZAPP Live in 2025 in a place called Kenilworth, which is like a Commodore-based event. However, today I'm going to be looking at the Vectrex. Why the Vectrex? This is a vector-based screen which has dazzling, sharp display, but we're going to look at some of the overlays, modern overlays that are available, which you can now add to your existing Vectrex. So let's go inside and have a chat with Laurence.
My name's Laurence Bennion. I make the blacklighter UV overlays for the Vectrex. I'm fighting a constant losing battle against the light. I've got my cloths up, which makes it look like a red light district. But if you want to come over, I'll introduce you. So at the moment, I'm doing 3 different types of, I suppose, well, let's just call them UV overlays for now. But we've got the standard UV one here. That's just printed in UV inks that are basically invisible under natural light, but as soon as you turn on the UV, they pop. And then moving on from the standard ones, you've now got, these ones are chroma depth, which won't look like anything on the camera, but essentially it makes this one look like a concave, like a cave, basically. So anything that's red stands out, and all the way through to the blue colours, through your yellows and your greens to your blue, and the blue is the furthest away. Anyway, and then moving on to the last one, this I'm having trouble releasing because no one's got a white light frame yet. But if they ever did get one, we could, maybe Jim would make a white one for the people, because it was originally the plan was to make a smart frame, which I do have a prototype of, where you can, the game controls the frame, and you can have hidden colours in the artwork, which when it say flashes red, the reds pop out, but you don't see the greens while the reds are out, like they go black, but then when the greens come out, the reds go black and the greens pop. It looks really cool. And so I built this as a prototype. And this one, it does all your RGB and your UV at the same time, you see. So if you pointed at that, you can turn that off and turn that on, you see. So that's your UV off and your white light back on. Like I've got another thing called the hollow cube, which is a mirror where your overlay is. And then using the frame, you put something on the inside of the frame. So you've got a gap between the overlay and the mirror. And that actually makes the vectors, it sort of reflects the UV behind the vectors, because it's a mirror, so it's equidistant away in both directions. And so you end up with stars here and here and here, with your vectors floating in the middle. And it looks like they're hovering right in front of your face, which is a very nice, cheap effect, really.
It's 3D without the need to wear those annoying glasses.
Exactly.
You've got some fantastic Vectrex overlays, but before we get to that, I would like a little snippet about your background and then how we got up to that point. What gave you the experience to do this venture?
Well, I always knew of the Vectrex and knew I wanted one, but never got around to getting one. But then in 2018, that changed, and I forced my wife to drive with me to Warrington and go to this real sketchy place and picked up a machine. It was amazing. It was just like the most amazing. And I got lucky because I got a really good one, And I debuzzed it. I got really into the,
Because the Vectrex is known for that little buzz it's on all the time.
The little buzz and the 1,000 volts stored in the back of it, So I left it for a week, took it apart. I taught myself to solder just to do that one thing, and now soldering anything. Go around asking the wife, anything you want me to solder, dear? And so I got this machine that I loved, and then coincidentally, my daughter was about like 2 or 3 years old, and I bought her a mini little Ludwig drum kit, as you do.
Okay, sounds appropriate.
I put it in a drum room with my drum kits, because I play the drums, and basically, it was okay, but it was a pretty boring room. The drums were nice and shiny, but other than that, there was not a lot to keep her occupied. And she would go in there, and she was amazing. She could play the drums at about 1. She didn't use her feet; she just sat on the stool and dun 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 dun. But she had good rhythm in it. So So then I thought, how can I make the room more exciting so she'll want to spend time in there and play in it and stuff? So I just UV'd up the whole room, just neon the whole room, right? So that meant I put an outline around, with tape, so the whole room looked like something out of Tron. I put up these great, I guess what do you call it, like mandalas. They all glow in the dark. Hid UV in the beams, like these long UV light strips and stuff like that. And with the neon, the LED stuff, right? You can really, they're really bright. Because in the olden days, if you tried it with an old black light bulb, you'd hit the switch and you'd be like, and all you got is like a faint purple glow in the corners. I don't know how nightclubs ever did it in the past, but anyway. So with the LED, it was dead easy, and so the whole room just looked great. All the drums were, I did all like designs, like almost like those. What was that stuff called where you had a ring and you go round and round, it makes pretty patterns, like a spirograph.
Spirograph, yes.
Yeah, I did similar things, but with like UV pens and stuff, and did all the drum heads to look really cool. And the idea was that when you turned the UV off, it was a boring room, and then you hit the UV and boom, it just came alive, right? So that was the idea, and it worked, and she played in there, and she spent more time in there, and everything with the UV face paints and UV balloons, and so the whole thing's full of balloons.
There's definitely a UV theme going on here, yes.
But then I'd made UV art to go on the walls, and all I did was buy a UV printer and some UV inks. And that was great. I could churn this stuff out only in sort of A4, but you could join the pages almost seamlessly together. And so I made great big A0 pictures of like the Bill and Ted Wild Stallion stuff, and put that all up around the room. And then I thought, and I've got this UV printer, and I've got a Vectrex, and there's no point me joining the long list of people making, replica overlays and all that sort of thing. So I thought I'll try and print one on the UV printer, just on some acetate, and then cut it out. Well, I was a bit underwhelmed by it, really, because the UV, so it wasn't like the frame that we have now that Jim developed. It was just, the room was full of UV light anyway, so it lit up the UV, but it also lit up the phosphor in the screen. And so the whole screen glowed white, which kind of ruined the effect. But there was a guy ages ago who made a smoke overlay. It was very popular. Daryl someone. And I had one. So I just put that behind it and went, oh my God, and it looked amazing. And then a bit later on, I changed the smoke overlay. They were hard to get, actually, because to get them, I didn't keep buying them off Daryl. Couldn't buy hundreds, and I must have made 30, 40,000 of these things now. It just goes on forever. Right? I've been through, I don't know, I think I'm on my 5th printer. I've worn them all out. And I've got I hack them so I can keep them going until the sponges inside are literally leaking out from under the...
And you're getting him on his word.
Yeah, and then I have to chuck that and get another printer. But now I've got a UV printer, I've got a neon printer, I've got a standard printer, I've got all these different things. But anyway, so then I just discovered that you can put a mirror back on it, which is just like a self-adhesive mirrored back. And it has exactly the same effect, that it tones down the glow from the screen that's being illuminated by the UV.
Sounds like there's been a lot of experimentation on this journey.
Oh yeah, bins worth of abandoned projects and stuff like that, because you never know what's going to work. You think this is going to look absolutely amazing, and you turn it on and just go, oh dear, that's 7 hours work up the Swanee. That's no good. Oh well. And the simplest things sometimes you think, oh, that'll never. Oh my God, that looks great. But I've been doing it long enough now that I know what works, and because by trial and error, the people like them and they sell, so they work. And we've gone from just sort of standard overlays, which is just UV light, to UV and a printing of neon over the top. So that really, because UV is very good at doing green and blue, right? But it's rubbish at red and yellow, right? Because the yellow is just green, basically. But the neon printers are really good at those things. But then you've got to make sure they line up. And no two printers print exactly the same, right? And then decided that I was going to try anything. So there was one where I tried a mirror in place of an overlay, which looks really cool just on its own, because it's like a smoke overlay. It just takes away, it just looks like the future. It just is super shiny and lovely and everything, right? And then if you put some UV stars attached to the frame that Jim developed, I mentioned earlier, it reflects the stars behind the vectors as well. So you just get this star field with the vectors floating in the middle. You can't see the edges of the screen or anything. So the illusion is that the vectors are just floating and you could literally just touch them. So anything delicate, like, I know anyone who works for 2D games, but anything like Mindstorm or best of all, Asteroids Deluxe, you know, when your ship explodes, those little bits, you feel like you could just pluck one out of the air. It's amazing. But then, yeah, that's really what opened it up as well, because I was just using the UV light, the ambient light in the room. But that's no good if someone comes in and turns the lights on, right? It ruins the effect. But then Jim, the genius, Jim Watt, he basically made a frame and just put 2 strips of LED lights down the side, and I thought, well, that will never work. What about the top? You know, you'll have like a very light sides, and you'll have a dark patch. And it didn't work that way at all. It worked exactly as he thought it would, and the whole screen was evenly lit. So I was a convert instantly, because you can then use it here, for instance, you know, in a corridor.
Well, you can't control the light.
You can now use the UV and get the full effect with the lights on in the room, right? So you don't have to make your family live in darkness while you geek in the corner, you know, this sort of thing.
And at this point, you will have seen some clips of the Vectrexes with these overlays, and I guarantee you, it won't look as good as camera. I've done the best I can, so you need to see it in person, really. And obviously, you're going to a few events.
Yeah.
We can actually see them. So we're at ZAPP Live 2025 at the moment as we record this. But you've been to quite a few of these events to demo it, and it's really where you need to see it. But in terms of the Vectrex itself, what was the appeal of the Vectrex?
Well, it's obvious. I mean, you've got to look
Well,
at it
it's
for
obvious
like
if you know
2
the
seconds.
Vectrex. But for anyone who's not seen a Vectrex before,
Well, it's just like, okay, so earlier on, just before you came over, there were 3 little ones, maybe 11, 12 or something, sitting there, playing away, and I said to them, how old do you think that machine is? They're like, oh, I don't know, like, you know. It looked very modern to them, because there's no blockiness to the lines, because it's all drawn with a beam of light. It's like laser sharp. And I said to them, it's 40, what is it now, 2 years old or something. And they were like, what? Because, you know, obviously, like, anything over like 5 years is an eternity, isn't it? It's like 42 years to them. And they couldn't believe it. But, you know, then they were spoiled, because then they looked at all the others and thought they just looked like a blocky mess and wandered off.
yeah, because there's slightly more modern consoles here as well, like PlayStation 2s, there's Dreamcasts, there's an Xbox One S, for goodness sake. So maybe this is becoming retro now.
Well, I mean, the fact that people say a PS2 is retro makes me feel so old. You know, because to me that came out yesterday.
Trust me, we're all feeling that. We're all feeling. So when you speak to someone young and they go, "What's a floppy disk?" or "What's a cassette?" and when you say, "What's a CD?" you know you've really hit the certain age range.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I never thought CDs.
No, CDs are pretty much retro.
Yeah.
You can still get them in your superstores and stuff, but really, would you?
Do you see that South Park where they went to a Blockbuster video that was obviously disused and it was haunted? It was like so old. Yeah, exactly. I thought that was hilarious.
But in terms of the Vectrex, there's something special about it because of those vector graphics, which makes it particularly unique. Oh, yeah. So when you look at a particular CRT screen normally, it's raster size, I think is the term.
Right. Yeah.
Which means it's going line. Yeah. Whereas the Vectrex, because it's vector graphics, it draws a line where it needs the line. It's literally built up of lots of...
And all that happens is if you over crank it, it just starts to flicker because it can't draw it fast enough.
Exactly.
And obviously it's very difficult to film the Vectrex as well because it looks like it's flickering on video because it's out of time with frames.
It's almost like a variable refresh rate, isn't it? Because if you've only got a few lines, it's going much quicker. If there's a lot of lines on the screen, it's actually having to go slower. So to get a state, it's not 50 hertz, 60 hertz, it's going everywhere but loose, which for capture is fantastic.
Yeah, oh no, yeah. So when I did sent that stuff to Techmoan and he filmed it for his YouTube channel, he told me, you know, trying to film a Vectrex is just an absolute
pain.
Bitch. Yeah, because, you know, and eventually he did do a really good job. I didn't realise that, you know, because what put me off the idea of getting a Vectrex was always that if it broke, that's it, you know, and you're going to have a nervous breakdown every time you turn it on, because you're going to be like, nothing, you know. So, you know, who's going to fix it? You know, so it's like buying a cobwebby, ancient old television or something. Like, who would do such a thing? But no, but the point is that there's so many people out there now in the community, right? You've got nothing to fear, because, you know, there's loads of advice on what to look for when you're getting one. You know, there are people that can fix it. You can basically build one out yourself. You know, there's all those brilliant people like Arcade Jason and co, who you know, have made all the boards so you can turn anything into a Vectrex, even an oscillator. You know, just, you know, the sound cards and the chips, I should say, and the you know, all that stuff, and the debuzz kits. You know, they've got the test cart and the overlay, so you can just get the vectors absolutely perfect. And with things like the Pytrex and the Vec Fever, if people don't know, they're the sort of they're the super carts, aren't they? They're not just multi-carts. They're also, they just use the Vectrex as a screen, essentially, don't they? They're just more powerful than the machine. So you can have these games like Star Wars and stuff like that. That's just far beyond what the Vectrex could handle. And you can play those. And they allow you to calibrate the screen. So no longer do you know, if I make myself an Armor Attack overlay, right, and then sell it to people, they'll go, oh, it doesn't fit my machine. You're like, well, it's because your machine's off. You know, you need to bring it, centralize everything, and then it will fit. You know, but that's another thing. You know, you get a PS2, and the next person's PS2 is going to play the same thing, right? Whereas a Vectrex, it ain't like that.
No, unfortunately not.
They're all different.
They have this beautiful charm, but they are so incredibly unique. So if you've got one, and I was just lucky, I got one my dad brought me. It's probably actually over 30 years ago. I think we had a cafe, and a guy just walked in with a Vectrex and saying, "Would you like a Vectrex?"
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was dodgy or anything, thank goodness. But it came with like 6 or 7 games on cartridge, no overlays, £7.
£7?
I mean, this is a long time ago, before retro was getting appreciated, shall we say. Yeah. So how can we get one of these wonderful things and find out more?
Oh, well, you need to go to blacklighter.co.uk. So that's my card. That's the website. Blacklighter, like Skywalker, I guess, but Blacklight had gone. So I had to have Blacklighter.
Thank you, it's an amazing story. I'm really pleased that you've got it demoed today and we can actually see that live. I implore you to have a look at it live, that's where you're going to see it best. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Cheers.